Hello and welcome to FGC Philosophy. I'm Tavian the Philosopher Napier, and this is where I focus on leveling up inside and outside the virtual arena. Of course, I'm a big fan of fighting games, so that's why I called it FGC Arena, but since then, this podcast has grown to cover multiple topics, not just because I have multiple interests, but also because I work in the esports industry and it's hard for me to not talk about it, and I just don't feel like making a new podcast. But nonetheless, we got a lot of things to talk about today. Today I'm going to be following up with some more Capcom talk, talking about their license agreement for tournaments, but also talking about the unfun part of esports, and that includes being an authority figure, doing some tedious work. I feel like a lot of times people want to talk about all the glamorous stuff, but sometimes you need to talk about the things that aren't fun, the day-to-day stuff, the things that people just don't want to talk about as often, just because. I want to share some of that with you guys because spring break, I had to do a lot of tedious stuff, so I figure I might as well talk about it. I've been talking about the accountability through content concept, and as such, I want to follow up on some things that I've been working on and will be working on for the rest of this week before spring break ends. I got one more day left. I'm recording this on Saturday. Hopefully this will be edited on Sunday and uploaded on Monday. We shall see. But nonetheless, before I get into all that, of course, I have updates and a few other things I want to talk about. First, I don't know how someone found my Patreon because I don't think I even put the link on there anymore, maybe from an old YouTube video, but thank you for whoever is thank you to the people that are joining my Patreon. I really appreciate you guys. The link is patreon.com/philosopher. You can go there and support me if you'd like. Right now, I don't have any specific tiers and what they are. It's more so you can just donate what you want. And any very little bit definitely helps towards me doing this more. But also, I want to say thank you to someone who messaged me the other day. I'm going to call them R just for the sake of anonymity. I didn't ask for their permission per se, and hopefully they're okay with this, and that's why I'm not saying their full name. But I kind of had a rough weekend. I had a rough day, I'll say. There was one day where someone that I really cared about said something that was incredibly disappointing, and it affects a lot of people, and I'm trying to process that right now. And as such, I was really, really down. My wife was, I was hanging out with my wife, we watched Dune, and she's making me feel better about the whole situation. But even still, it's just a really crappy situation. And maybe in the future, once it's more resolved, I'll talk more about that. But for now, I wanted to read this message and just show appreciation for people who reach out to me and say these sort of things, because I'm always weird about this sort of stuff, but I feel like this is the reason why I do it. This is the reason why I do this podcast, why I work so hard to better myself and try to be an example for others. So if I don't acknowledge this kind of stuff and talk about it, then I'm doing myself and others a disservice by doing this. So I don't want to make people think I'm bragging about it, but I just want to share the story, and hopefully you find somebody, as a listener that resonates with you, right? Or you become that person that inspires somebody else. So that said, let me try to read this as best as I can. I'm a terrible reader, but I'm going to do it anyway. So again, from R, it says, "Hi, I'm a high school senior that recently found your podcast through Spotify. Also, I'm on Spotify if you didn't know that. I've had an obsession with your episodes recently as I found myself listening on the way to and from school, during some of my classes. Hopefully it's like not a class where you like homeroom or something like that, whatever it may be, like a study class. I know some people have that, so make sure you're doing your classwork first. I don't want to encourage you to be unproductive, but nonetheless, I digress. Listening to it at lunch, and I really wanted to let you know how much I really appreciate your podcast. Thank you. I appreciate you. I find myself finding common interest as well as indirectly guiding me to the path I want to take after high school, which again, that's a hard thing to do. So I'm glad to be a help in that. I've gone through a few traumatic experiences throughout my life, and I've gone through many ups and downs and eventually prioritized my growth mentally and have gotten in a better state now, which is good. I'm glad to hear that. I've converted my traumas into career paths, wanting to become a school counselor therapist, and at many times I have strong feelings of self-doubt. Listening to how you overcome these thoughts and portraying it in a way that I can understand has been a very insightful thing to me lately. Thank you. I've even had some troubles in the FGC about joining tournaments because of fear or of embarrassment, even though I know in the back of my mind that it would further my growth and teach me better than anything else would right now. You've become a detrimental part of my self-care, and I cannot express how much this means to me, especially since I've grown up with the mindset that I should be stoic and suck it up. You've been a very huge inspiration to me, and I will spread your word among my friends and family. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that message. That made my day. That really, really made my day. So thank you so much, R. I wanted to reach out to you, but I read this like right before I was going to record, and I just the day before I recorded, I read it. No, the day of today. I read it today, this morning, and I'm recording now in the evening after doing some work at the arena. And yeah, I appreciate that. That made my day. I mean, there's some stuff that I could talk about here with being stoic. Of course, for people who only listen to me, you might not know that I'm black. So my mom is from Atlantic City, New Jersey, and my dad's a Jamaican immigrant. So I'm first generation on my dad's side, and my dad's a very stoic individual. I kind of tried. I was a very opposite of that when I was a kid. I was a crybaby. I was a crybaby. Cryberry. I was a cryberry. I was very insecure. I got bullied a lot because I was a gentle giant, quote unquote. But at the same time, as I got older and got into martial arts and boxing and other things, I started to develop my own self-confidence from different father-like figures. My own father definitely was a father figure for me, but he didn't really... he didn't give me everything I needed to grow and mature as a person, as me, as the philosopher, as Tavian. But I definitely looked up to him, and a lot of people around me had that mentality that you're supposed to be stoic. You're not supposed to show your emotions. You're supposed to be a man, right? Regardless of what you think of that, that's just the reality I lived in. That was what I was supposed to do. So this really resonates with me, and I get what you're saying, where this kind of relates to you, and that's great to hear. And I know I've talked about going to tournaments and being insecure and that kind of stuff, so I'm glad that that's resonating with you. I want to reiterate the fact that you got to get out of your comfort zone if you want to grow. That's with anything in life, whether it be something that seems so unimportant like a video game, which they're very important to me, fighting games, lots of games, but also in your career and figuring out who you are and being okay with saying, I don't know what I want to do yet, but I'm going to figure it out, and also taking your past traumas. I've done very much the same thing, where I've worked on myself and I've recognized a lot of things in myself that I want to help other people with. So I'm glad that cycle is continuing, where I'm turning my past traumas into something to help other people and help myself. And now you are going down that similar path. So again, that means so much to me. Thank you so much. I don't want to go on too much about this, but I really wanted to highlight that. Thank you. Well, let's go on to the next thing. So a few life updates for me. Again, I'm on spring break. I think I mentioned that earlier. I still had a couple of side jobs, but for the most part, I've just been relaxing, doing a lot of tedious work, which I'll get to in a little bit. But also, one of the really awesome things is that I got to do my online local, and I got to go to my actual in-person locals, both of them this week. I haven't been able to do it this whole semester. I haven't been able to do my online tournaments since the start of this semester, and I haven't really been able to consistently go to my locals since last semester in September. And I will admit that has really contributed to some depression and just, I don't know the word for it, but just missing my family, so to speak. And I don't think I realized how much it affected me until I got to go there and see everybody and play games and see my people on my online tournament. So also, I joined the tournaments. I joined the Street Fighter tournament for my online local. I wound up getting third with Karine the whole entire way. I'm a Fong main, but I'm trying to just get out of my comfort zone. Played Karine the whole entire way and got third place, and I'm really proud of my performance against some really strong players. And then I got second in the Guilty Gear Strive tournament, and I was really happy with that. The only person that beat me, they're a really strong Melia player named Teddy Treebark, and I don't feel bad about that at all. I definitely wasn't free. I ran into him early on in winner's side bracket. I had to fight his twin brother first, then I had to fight him. His brother Pace is actually a Kai main, Kai Kisuke. And after I lost, I basically 3-0'd everybody. Guilty Gear Strive is a best 3 out of 5 format, and I ran through everybody, and I just had this very stoic, angry murder face the whole entire time I played. I was like, I'm not losing until I get back to this guy, because he was the only person that I legitimately just wanted to fight in a tournament environment. I love tournament settings, scenarios, the feeling of it, the heart racing, the nervousness. I love all of that, because when you're in those kinds of situations, that's how you find out who you really are, and versus who you want to be, right? And I still get that heart racing feeling, not even just playing him, just people in general, that risk of losing. So to kind of go back to the message from R and working on tournaments, I personally, when I'm in a tournament and I feel my heart fluttering and I feel like I'm nervous, I fully embrace it, and I treat that like an adrenaline rush, right? Some people don't work this way naturally. I wasn't like this, but think about roller coasters or any sort of scary thing that happens, like like, you know, when you go over a bump in your car really fast and your like stomach goes into your chest, that kind of feeling. I fully pay attention to that, and I breathe into that. I make sure I'm consciously breathing. In the middle of a match, I might not always remember, my breathing might get tense, but then after a round or after that match, I will take a breath. You know, I'll just stop. I'll think, I'll relax, I'll just push out anything that's not important. I make sure I actively push away any thoughts that don't have anything to do with me performing my best in this match. You know, whether it be if someone else is thinking about me, which to this part of my life, that's not really an issue, but as an example, that's something that I make sure I actively would do. Usually it's just analyzing and making sure I'm not over-analyzing, and then trying to hone in on one thing that I can work on, and making sure my mind isn't just racing with too many possibilities. I tend to be an overthinker. So this environment where you have to control yourself. You have to be present, right? It is a test. And since I don't really get to go to those often, you know, I'm like, okay, am I rusty at this? How do I do at it? You know, how will I do at it? And I performed well. I only dropped a handful of combos. I only made a few mistakes here and there that I immediately recognized, and I didn't get bothered by it or anything like that. But just where I am with this game for someone who kind of plays it on a casual level, but I play with a competitive mindset. I just put a casual amount of time into it, if that makes sense. So I really enjoyed myself. I played a bunch of games. I got to play KOF for the first time. That was really fun. I had a couple people like, oh yeah, I want to finally beat somebody in KOF. Only to like use my legacy knowledge to actually still beat them. So, you know, I'm 35. I've played a lot of fighting games, and I like to learn and learn quickly. So the people that are playing me, it's like I can't memorize a bunch of combos, right? But I have neutral. I can play pretty good neutral, and there's characters like Robert Garcia, that's basically a Shoto. I can play a decent, you know, game without having crazy combos. So that was really fun to do. I'm just really, really happy about that. And then the same thing with playing Karine in Street Fighter. I love hit confirming. It is like a zen mindset to just one button into a special into like a really hard to do combo. It is just being technical in just such a pure form. It's like pure technical and level of skill. Maybe not super creative to some extent. I think the creativity comes in the movement and the timing and stuff like that. But once you get that hit, it's all mechanical, all technical. And I love that. You're just in full control. And you just gotta make sure you do your thing right. And the other person gets punished for throwing out a button wrong or blocking wrong. That kind of stuff is fun. Whereas Fong, he's a very creative character to me. He's like a completely creative outlet with some discipline mixed in there. That has been very, very great. Oh, of course, Elden Ring. My friend bought me Elden Ring, and I've been streaming that. I streamed it a lot during spring break. Now that spring break's getting over, I might not get the chance to stream it as much. But yeah, I've never been a big fan of the Dark Souls games. For those who don't know, Elden Ring is made by the same people who made Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Essentially, it's like a role-playing game where you die a lot, and it's just like brutal with how hard the game is. And for the longest time, I had a different kind of mindset with these games. But I also think that this game in particular is probably one of the best ones, except for maybe Sekiro. I think Elden Ring is just a beautiful looking game, first off. And then second, the way it plays is more open world, and you get a horse. I love any game where you get to ride a horse. That's just me. I don't know. Zelda, Horizon Zero Dawn. What else? There's another game that gives you a horse. What is that game called? Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah, that's another game I'm going to be streaming after this for sure. I love those kinds of games, but it's also I get to play as a samurai build, using the samurai build if you are familiar with the game at all. And I fought this one boss like probably 50 to 60 times within 2 days and finally beat this dude, and it just felt so great. more hit. Let's fucking go! Let's go! Yes! Somebody clip that. The mindset that I had getting into this, because my friend bought it, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stream it for you, buddy. I'm gonna just play this game and just suck it up. But I went into it with a fighting game mindset where you just take your L's and you learn from your experience. You take your L's and you learn from your experience. And that's all I did, and I haven't had a bad time with the game. Like, there's some times where I lose a boss fight and I'm just like, son of a bitch. You know, pardon my French, but I get, like, not mad, but just, you put in a lot of work and then all of a sudden something, like, you don't get the result that you want. You're gonna have a reaction to it, but then immediately I'm like, okay, well, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? And if I get to the point to where I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna go move on to something else, then I move on to something else. There's tons to do in the game. It's so open world that you're not restricted to having to fight this one boss to make progress. There's one boss in particular, the one that I was talking about, his name is Margit the Omenfell. They all have crazy names. The game is wacky. It's like Guillermo del Toro made the monsters. It is insane looking. But yeah, it's a really fun game. There's a lot to do in it. It's not super linear, which is good. It also doesn't spoon feed you. I personally looked up a few things just to make it easier myself, because I'm trying to have a good experience. So I will look up things when I want to look up things, but I'll also just play the game. And then this is one of the games where I don't care about spoilers or backseat gaming, so people try to give me advice and help me out. And so it's kind of interactive versus a story-driven game. This game does have a really rich story. I just don't care. I'm catching it as I play it, but if there's spoilers, I really don't. Whatever. So it's just way more interactive for me to be able to play this game, and people can talk to me and share their experience, and they want to see me beat a boss, and they see me react, and that's fun for them. So it's been a really great game to play during spring break. I came at a great time. Shouts out to Chef. I call him Chef. I've known this guy for like 20 years probably. I've never met him in person, but he's one of my best online friends. I kind of fell out of touch with him when I started getting really big into personal development. I had to work on myself, and I just dropped video games and the internet for a while. But he stayed a friend. We got back in touch. One of our mutual friends passed away, someone I worked with that I kind of introduced to our like gaming group. During the pandemic, he passed away. And so I've been reaching back out to my old gaming buddies and trying to just have fun with them, you know, like reach out to them once a week or whatever. And I'm glad I have, because I've gotten to rekindle some friendships that I haven't experienced in a while. And because of that, I have this game now. And we both play it. Sometimes it'll help me out. It's cooperative to some extent. So yeah, Elden Ring. If you have an extra $60, I recommend it. Otherwise, just waiting for it to go on sale. I don't personally buy games when they come out. I'm not spending $60 on a video game nowadays. I got a wife and kid. I'm not doing it. I'm just not. But if someone's gonna buy a game from me, you're damn right I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna try to enjoy it, and I definitely have been. So again, I do recommend it. If you're a big gamer and you have some extra money, go get it. If you don't have a good level of patience and you can't lose a lot, on one level, this game might be good for you to help you work on that, but probably just avoid this game until it's really, really cheap and you want to try it out, because it does look beautiful. I got it on PC. If you're interested in doing co-op, I might help you out, or I might join your world, or you can join my world, depending on like how I feel. Try not to be too prideful about it. But yeah, it's a fun game. Recommend it. Check it out. Watch some videos, watch some streamers, just so you know what it's about. It looks beautiful. All right, so in another update, one of the things that I talked about on my stream, and I just wanted to re-record it. I didn't feel like using my stream version of it because I've had more time with this now. And this is something I had thought about for a while. I've been thinking about it. It was recommended to me by a doctor. And I said no for about a year. And recently I went back 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago, not quite 2 weeks. But I started taking antidepressant medication. And I feel very conflicted about it. Like right now, I feel fine about it. You know, talking about it is a little bit harder. I'm finding myself to be more resistant to it. But for a long time, and I still believe this, I think it's important to work on yourself. So I've dealt with my depression with no medication my whole entire life. And I've had, you know, bouts that pop up here and there. I have avoided my whole life dealing with any sort of self-harm or anything like that. I've never even really did like any cutting. I've had friends that, you know, cut themselves and stuff like that, not to end their own life, but just to feel something, you know. I don't know if you guys have had that friend or have been that person, but I never was. I didn't really think that was beneficial. But at the same time, there are certain kinds of people like myself who still have, I don't know if this is a term that I just call it or if it's something else, but essentially like passive suicidal thoughts where it's just it's so casual that you're used to it. It's almost like a morbid sense of humor. But when you have a wife and kid, it's a little bit more important. And I've been talking to my wife the whole entire time. I make sure like if I have these sort of thoughts, I share them with her. I'm very open about it with her and like some of my close friends as well. Because I have mental techniques in place that help me manage it and make sure that I don't do anything I'm going to regret or that would affect anybody else. But at the same time, for multiple reasons, I've just been tired, I've been less motivated, I've had to push myself to do things way harder than I felt like I've ever had to push myself before, and still not being satisfied with my level of effort put into it. But since taking this medication, and it's kind of funny because there's a second benefit to this that I didn't get into this for, didn't take the medication for, but the doctor told me that it's an added benefit, that it helps with people who have ADD and ADHD. And I happened to be diagnosed with ADD when I was 17. So it's funny that this one pill, for the most part, does not really any negative side effects except maybe a stomach ache right now, from time to time when I take it. But whether it be a placebo effect or not, I'm about a week and a half into taking this, and I have to double my dosage once 2 weeks hit. It's fascinating seeing my mind, like, I pay attention to myself a lot, and I've noticed a difference, whether it be placebo effect or actually the medication taking place. It's easier for me to focus, it's easier for me to wake up in the morning. Usually when I wake up in the morning, it's like a waking dream for about an hour or two. It's like my dream is still happening in my head, but now when I wake up, it's like I had a dream and now I'm awake and now I can just get up and go do my thing. It is so hard to articulate the difference, but I'm glad that I've worked on myself for so long, because I don't want to be dependent on any sort of medication, but I am glad that I'm here taking this now, because I'm able to recognize and appreciate what this pill seems to be doing for me. And I'm supposed to notice the full effects within a month, so I probably will revisit this topic and just talk about it, because there might be other people out there who are struggling with depression, where medication might help. But I'm of course going to still talk about personal development stuff, so that hopefully, this is a new experience for me, but hopefully if and when it comes to the place where I don't have to take this medication anymore, I already still have the mental discipline in place to take care of myself and make sure I maintain this. Because for me personally, in order for me to not be super depressed or to fall into the trap or not let myself interact with my depression and continue to do what I need to get done, there's certain criteria. I need to work out. I need to meditate. I need to do things that are fun for me. I need to learn and grow, like see some sort of growth. Those are criteria that I've recognized in myself that brings me joy, that brings me fulfillment, and helps me avoid this state where I just don't feel like life really matters. So I want to make sure that as I'm on this, I'm being completely transparent, because for me, it almost feels like a cop-out to do this. So I think it's incredibly important for me to be transparent about me taking something that's affecting my mindset and my mood. Maybe not my mindset, but more so my mood. I don't know enough about this for sure. I asked the doctor a bunch of questions, and he had a limited amount of answers. I don't think he knew as much about it or wasn't expecting me to ask as many questions. So I may have to talk to a pharmacist or something like that to get more clarity on it, because I like knowing what I'm taking. I like to know what the heck I'm putting into my body. And so as a listener, I think it's also important for you to know what I'm taking. I think it's important for me to clarify that I'm taking an antidepressant, because if I'm just randomly way more happier, it's like those models that say, oh yeah, if you do this lifestyle, you're going to be in shape, but they're taking like liposuction and surgery and stuff like that. You're not being authentic. So maybe taking medication might be helpful for you. I'm 35. I've lived a lot of life and I've worked on myself for a long time. But that doesn't mean that someone younger than me can't take it. So I want to have that clarity. It's kind of hard to talk about, but I truly believe that transparency is the best thing in this kind of situation. And I'm not ashamed of it. It's a little bit hard for me to talk about. Maybe it's a little embarrassing. I don't think shame is anywhere in there. But yeah, so, if you have any experience with antidepressants, if it's something that you've taken, I'd love to hear more about that and have that conversation, whether it be, digital or have a voice call or something like that. I'm still new to this. I've never really been a big pharmaceutical kind of guy. I'm not anti-vaccine or anything like that, but from my point of view, you take care of your body takes care of you. And I have, since this pandemic, not done a great job of taking care of myself. And so I need some supplements that are going to help my emotions. And so that's where I'm at this point. So I'm still learning. I'm still growing. But now I have kind of like a little bit of an aid to help me along that journey. Okay, so moving on to things that I'm listening to right now. The main thing has been Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. At this point, I'm on chapter 24. Harry has the egg, has already defeated the dragon, or gotten the egg from the dragon, is trying to figure out how that works. And I gotta say, there's just so much more in the book than in the movie. Again, I'm not hating on the movie because I read the book. I'm not trying to become a snob, but I do think that comparing the two is fun to talk about, right? And I'm glad that I'm getting into this because I get to appreciate a story that I liked just from the movies. But seeing the source material or listening to the source material has been very enjoyable. I do like the world of Harry Potter. It's very messed up. There's a lot of plot holes here and there. But it's fun. It's a fun story. It's very interesting. Again, I don't really get into the politics of J.K. Rowling. I know a lot of people have one way or another about things that she said or people believing that she said things. But in terms of Harry Potter, I've watched the Magical Beast movies, at least the first two. I think there's only two right now, and then there's a third one with Mads Mikkelsen. This guy has changed. This Grindelwald guy, every single movie he's been a different actor. Actually, in a second I'll talk about another movie that has a Grindelwald actor in it. But yeah, so I have been listening to the Harry Potter Goblet of Fire book. I really enjoy it. So a friend of mine, he listens to the podcast as well and recommended me to get an app for listening to the Bible, because I had recently talked about atheist versus Christian debates. For those who don't know, I think the term is atheist agnostic. I have no intentions of ever getting back into religion, but I grew up Christian and I wanted to read the Bible as an adult. When I was younger, I went to church a lot. I had read like children's Bibles. We had like a whole collection of hardback stories like Moses and the whale one. Was it Jonah? I don't know. There's a couple of them, but I just wanted to re-listen to the audiobook, or I wondered if there's an audiobook. So he recommended an app, but then I was like, wait a minute. I wonder if Audible has it for free. And sure enough, it definitely did. So I got it on Audible. I have it acquired. I started listening to Genesis, but I'm going to wait until I finish Harry Potter because it sounds like something I'm really going to want to analyze. I don't think I'll talk about it too much on here. I might do some YouTube videos on it because I don't want to get too deep into talking about religion on my podcast. Because I also don't want to offend people either. So people who already listen to this, I don't want to throw that too much in there, but I just want to kind of bring up the topic of it. Because I have a certain viewpoint about the Bible that, it can be helpful to people, but I just don't take it literally. That's just my viewpoint on the Bible, is I don't take it literal. I don't think most of those things happen in there. If you happen to believe that, that's totally fine too. But I'm so curious about it. I really want to listen to it and see. So I have the King James version for people who are curious. I'm probably going to get other versions of it as well. So I might wind up getting that app because it seems like that has different versions of it. But yeah, I think that's something that I'm looking forward to, is just paying attention to that and seeing, rereading something as an adult that had a huge impact on my life as a kid. And kind of just analyzing it from a more objective standpoint here now. I guess subjective too, because there's going to be interpretations from my point of view. I'm going to have my own interpretations or what other people seem to be interpreting. So it's going to be a fascinating journey, and I would like to talk about it. But I also know it's a very tense subject that people don't always know how to talk about. I have known a lot of Christian people. I grew up in Michigan, or I grew up in Alabama, I should say. From like 14 to 25, 24. So I lived in the Bible Belt. There are people, whether you know this or not, for people who are more on the atheist or just non-Christian side, there are certain kinds of Christians that just can't think outside of the Christian worldview. And as such, they have a very limited worldview where their mind just can't perceive information that isn't revolving around the Bible. It's hard to explain. If you've experienced it, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, then good for you. But some people just, they can't think outside the Bible, and it boggles my brain. But I know tons of cool Christians. The one that recommended this to me is a very, very cool. Oh, he's not Christian, not a Christian. I think the correct thing would be Catholic. So sorry, I don't want to get that. I don't want to misquote that. But either way, thank you. And then also, I look forward to that. But I was going to mention this earlier. Me and my wife went to go see the Batman with Edward Cullen from Twilight. Also the guy from, oh yeah, he was from the Goblet of Fire as well. So, what the heck is his name? Robert Pattinson. So if you don't know this, he was actually the Hufflepuff kid from the Wizard of Fire that got killed. He was Cedric Diggory. So I think that was kind of funny because I didn't really see that tie in Goblet of Fire in this. But also, Grindelwald in the first one portrays the Penguin, Oswald Copperpot, Oz Copperpot or Copper something. What is his name? Colin Farrell. I think it's Colin Farrell. Yeah. It's Colin Farrell. I'll tell you what. I did not know that it did not look like Colin Farrell at all to me. And then even after being told it was Colin Farrell, I'm looking at a picture of him, of the Penguin right now. I still didn't know that it was Colin Farrell. But overall, the movie was really good. I gotta say, the movie was great. I enjoyed it. I think it was kind of fun. It was very dark and very brutal. The Batmobile was badass. It didn't look anything like a Batmobile, but the car was badass. I'm a big muscle car fan. I like different kinds of cars. I like imports as well, but I do like my muscle cars. And this car just instilled fear. It looked like it instilled fear in people. It was badass. It was like somewhere between, what are those drag race cars with the jet engines? I don't know if you've ever seen those. I used to go to drag race tracks all the time as a kid. And they would bring out, once it got dark, they would bring out these drag race cars that had a jet engine literally strapped to it. And it just had this turbine winding engine. So it had like a combination of these jet cars mixed with like, just a really badass muscle car like sound to it as well. So it just had like this satisfying sound if you're a car fan. And it just looked like it could destroy somebody. I really think Robert Pattinson did a good job. There were times where I felt like he was inspired by Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Spider-Man 3. He very much looked like emo Spider-Man from time to time. Like he was about to just bust out a dance and start dancing on us, right? But he didn't have that kind of mindset. He just, he looked very brooding. And I liked the portrayal of it. It was fun. I think the movie's getting good reviews right now. I haven't really looked at any, I haven't seen any reviews that don't like it yet. I haven't gone out my way to look at it. I think the funniest kind of review of the movie is a series called Pitch Meeting. I love the Pitch Meeting series. They actually have their own YouTube now, YouTube channel. They used to be on Screen Rant, and now they're on their own channel. So I would say if you're on the fence about seeing Batman, I would recommend it before they pull it from theaters. Whenever that may happen, they'll put it on streaming as well. But I think it's a good theater experience. We haven't been to the theater in a little bit. We used to go a lot more, but since the pandemic hit, we haven't gone as much. And one of our favorite theaters also closed down like right before the pandemic hit, and that really sucked. Probably a year before the pandemic hit. It was called the Alamo. Kind of a bummer. Really great. It had good food and drinks, and they would bring the food out to you. So you could order whatever you wanted, and they would just bring it right to you. You had like these really comfortable chairs. I really missed that theater. Same theater, the same building is now owned by AMC, but it's not the same. It's like, it's just not the same. Anyways, I digress. Let's get into these main topics. All right, so for those who may or may not know, I just want to briefly bring this up. I don't really want to talk about it too much because I think that this is standard stuff for me, and I just want to hit some points, and I will post links so that you can check it out on your own. But essentially, there are these tournament license agreements. So tournament organizers, people who are hosting tournaments, in order to use the IP of a game developer for certain kinds of games like Riot's League of Legends and Valorant, Overwatch, they have this contract that you have to apply for, this application you have to apply for to use their tournament, and there are restrictions within it. And Capcom came out with one specifically for Street Fighter V, and I'm sure it's going to extend to Street Fighter 6. I think they said specifically Street Fighter 5, but they're probably drafting it up now and working on it to prepare for Street Fighter 6, which they already announced. Street Fighter 5 it's already on its way out. They're going to be announcing and showing more of Street Fighter 6 this summer, probably at EVO. That's my prediction. They haven't said when, it just said summer 2022, excuse me. I'm 2 years behind, Jesus. But yeah, a lot of people in the FGC are just not happy with this whatsoever. And there are some people that I feel like are overreacting and don't even know what they're talking about. And there are other people that I think this legitimately affects. The main things that I want to bring up are the fact that they have really terrible cap on the prize pools. So essentially, normal terminology is you can only have so much winnings for players in a tournament, in one tournament specifically, and then so much given out from all of your tournaments throughout a whole entire year. For Capcom, it is 2,000 for any individual tournament and 10,000 for the whole entire year. And that's incredibly low. And my concern with that is the fact that the FGC already has a stigma that it's very poverty. Okay, it's like, you know, broke. It's very grassroots. Some people love that aspect of it, that it's very grassroots. I like that aspect of it, but there are tons of people who have been putting a lot of time and effort into these tournaments, organizing it and competing in them, that I think this is hurting, you know, because there are a lot of players that this is basically their career, and sponsors pay them to go out there, or they spend their own money to go and compete and make money off these winnings. By doing this, for people who are specifically competing in Street Fighter, and probably only Street Fighter, they're limiting how much money they can make outside of tournament sanctioned, outside of Capcom sanctioned tournaments. So if it's a tournament like Combo Breaker or EVO or CEO, Frosty Faustings, they have to have a hard cap of $2,000 in payouts. And I don't think that's just for like first place. I think that's total. They're working on revising this. They made an announcement saying they're revising the agreement because it's very vague in a lot of ways and people are trying to talk about it. I'm also going to have a link to Ultra David's breakdown. If you don't know, Ultra David is also a lawyer on top of being a commentator and an analyst for fighting games. There are some people who are annoyed at it because he is technically employed by Capcom, but this, in my opinion, the breakdown does seem pretty unbiased. He got called out for some stuff and added some more things saying that he was paid by Capcom. Most people already knew that, but he clarified that after being called out for it. But nonetheless, it's going to be there. That's the closest thing we have to somebody in the FGC who's a lawyer that can break this down and kind of talk about it. But again, it is very vague. I will have a link to the license as well so you can look at it. If you're a tournament organizer, I highly recommend that you apply for this. I'm going to be applying for it as well just to make sure that I'm covering, crossing my T's and dotting my I's. We're not going to hit this cap. It's not going to affect me for the most part in any kind of way. I might have to work on my branding a little bit more because there are specific branding things that you have to do. But the average individual is not going to hurt. But for people like Combo Breaker, EVO, NLBC, these weekly tournaments that might get a lot of money from paying out from Matcherino, which again, it's a very vague, we don't know if Matcherino and stuff like crowdfunded prize pools technically count towards it or not. And also charging admission for events, because of the nature of fighting game tournaments, it's going to be very hard to challenge a tournament organizer for charging for spectating these games because they have so many games that they're covering. It's not specifically just for Street Fighter V, so they can't really regulate that kind of thing. So there's going to be loopholes for tournament organizers to deal with some of the crap that they have to deal with, but it's also just incredibly stupid. I personally think that Capcom must have a lot of confidence in their own tournaments. What you see a lot of times when you have these kinds of agreements, it's because these game developers already have their own tournaments and their own leagues. Like League of Legends, they have LCS, League of Legends Championship Series. You have Overwatch League or OWL. You have these tournaments that have tons of payouts for it. So they already have that kind of control. But the FGC, the fighting game community, already has this pre-existing culture of hosting their own tournaments. It's very for us, by us kind of mentality. And then Street Fighter has the Capcom Pro Tour. But they also have Street Fighter League, which a lot of people don't seem to bring up Street Fighter League when they talk about the money that circulates within Capcom and the winnings in their tournaments, because Street Fighter League is completely different from CPT, the Capcom Pro Tour. So I think that they have a lot of confidence in that, and they're probably going to be investing more time and money into these kinds of leagues, maybe doing something bigger, doing more team doing more teams. I really think they're pushing more towards Street Fighter League as well. I could be wrong, but I think they're trying to do more with teams rather than just one-on-one games, because team games tend to get more attention. If you look at any other game, Rocket League, League of Legends, Valorant, Overwatch, they get more views than the average fighting game. So I think that's why they're getting into this. Again, it doesn't affect me personally too much. I just have to make sure I cross my T's and dot my I's. And again, I urge you guys, tournament organizers, to do the same thing. So that said, let's move on to our last topic of the day. So our last topic is the unfun part of esports. As you guys know, I have 4 jobs. The main 2 that I'll talk about today are going to be, my college esports. And again, I'm on spring break, so this is a good time to get some spring cleaning, so to speak, done with the computers. I got done from the arena today and the other day as well. And I had to update 32 graphics cards on all the PCs. For some reason, somehow, I'm not IT, but I have the mindset that if I can do something and do it faster, then I'm just going to go ahead and get it done. And so I have to preface a lot of what I'm going to talk about with the fact that we do have some IT. They do support us. They have an employee who transferred to a different department, so they're down a man. I basically have 2 people that can help us, and they support a whole bunch of other departments as well. And I also have to submit a work order anytime I have an issue, and I just feel like a lot of this is incredibly time consuming. I can do a lot of this on my own. It is not in my job description to do this kind of stuff, but I'm not going to wait a week for you to update my graphics cards when I can just do it myself and get paid to do it. So, I sat there, updated 32 graphics cards because they had never been updated for some reason. In the past, I guess our IT just never thought to update the graphics cards. Some of the issues that we've been having with production and the videos may have been because of this. So if this fixes some issues, then great. I also had to fix some other stuff, like there is a program called GG Leap that some of these computers have, the 32 PCs, and it just wasn't working properly. So I had to reach out to customer support for the program. They had to walk me through some stuff. The first person couldn't really help me and assess what the issue was. And then the other person found the workaround and then, remote logged into 2 or 3 of the PCs and fixed those. And then I was like, okay, I can just do this myself. What do I need to do? Like, how do I fix this? Right? That's just how I am. Tell me how to do it so that I have the knowledge. I think that's why I have so much job security, is because I learn how to fix everything myself. Even if I have to eventually pass it on and delegate it to somebody else, I just have a lot of knowledge up here because I just troubleshoot stuff. I Google things. I try to figure out how to fix stuff if no one else knows how to do it. And I'm not going to wait a week for someone else to go do it, submit a work order, and just sit here and wait and deal with this issue when I can just figure it out myself. So yeah, I've been sitting here and working on these PCs and just restarting them and trying out things and Googling stuff, but then finally got all that fixed, and it feels good. It's very boring work, so I was listening to podcasts. Normally when I'm doing esports stuff, I can't, I'm watching video games or I'm managing people and delegating, so I can't really listen to podcasts or watch YouTube videos. But for a lot of this, I just had, I was listening to Harry Potter, or listening to some of my atheist Christian debates, and just getting this done, and then also talking to tech support and trying to do all that. And it's just, it's not very fun. It's not very beautiful. I've got to sit down and I'm going to make some overlays for our production as well. I got Photoshop work. I know how to do Photoshop. I know how to make things simple, minimalistic. I don't know how to do all the fancy things. I do, but it's more time consuming. But I can make some minimalist overlays and make some things look nice. And then I also have to put it into the program called vMix and get that ready for production and delegate that. So yeah, a lot of times when you're working in the esports industry, what I recommend, depending on if it's a physical or remote location, to turn this into some advice, you got to do more than what you're asked. You have to be willing to learn more than anybody else around you. If you want to be valuable, if you want to actually get a paid job in the esports industry, you got to understand that you need to know more than everybody else around you, or you have to at least be able to do more than most of the people around you. Okay, so to understand, to break this down, I know how to make overlays. I know how to run multiple programs that are streaming, like OBS, Streamlabs OBS, vMix. I know how to commentate multiple games to a decent degree. I know how to be professional and present myself and talk to non-gamers. I know how to talk to gamers as well. I know how to learn games and mechanics very quickly. I can learn games and play games and compete at a decent degree for most games, including Rocket League. You know what? I'm going to say Rocket League is probably one of my worst games, even though I coach it. Me playing it mechanically, I'm still trying to work on that. It's a time-consuming thing. You got to put time into it. But League of Legends, I can understand to a decent degree. Most shooters, I'm okay at. I think I'm trash at them, but I'm okay. Halo, I'm okay at. I'm actually pretty good in Halo, apparently. But I can play multiple games. I can also teach people how to do things, which is incredibly important. I also know how to analyze people emotionally and logically and break down what they're doing. So when I'm either commentating or I'm coaching or I'm just talking about business, I can break down things because I've talked to people for so much. I have a lot of skills that I've acquired over the years, and that's something I really recommend you do. Learn and do more and be able to know more than most of the people around you, and you're always going to be more valuable than the people around you. I don't say that to be arrogant, but I've worked for a long time. You know, I have my bachelor's in animation and game design. I've worked in GameStop and sales for 6 years. I've done commentary. I've written articles for game reviews for several different websites and had some really good hits on those. You know, I've been making content for years and podcasting and talking and public speaking. These are all skills that I've developed that I sucked at. I was trash at before, and I had to get better at it. So again, I'm not the best at any of these things, but it's kind of like a lot of people say, you know, master a skill, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. So I'm not saying this is the only way, because I want to clarify this and make sure that I'm cautious with how I word this. One of the ways, the way that worked for me, especially if you're the kind of person that has multiple interests anyway, you can be a jack of many trades and a master of none and be successful and grow. I still recommend you specialize in something specific so that you have value in a very specific area. But when you get that job or that opportunity, you make sure that you do that job first. And then when you do that job and you're doing it well, your free time or extra time goes towards learning other skills within that field, right? If you're already good at one thing and you can really hone in on it, this isn't for you. You already have your niche, you're good at it, you can do it. I don't need to give you advice. But again, if you're struggling to figure out what you want to do, just pick one, get into that field, and then once you have that door open for you, you can kind of just learn whatever they're willing to do. Because most esports organizations are understaffed, okay? Schools that start esports programs don't understand how much employees need to actually be there to run the program. So you're going to have opportunities. You just got to make sure people respect your boundaries and you don't get overworked. That's more likely to happen. But if you're willing to do the work, you're young, you're willing to grind, or whatever it may be, you have a lot of energy, I think that's a really good thing to do. I think that's really beneficial for you. Another unfun thing I want to talk about is having to be an authority. Being authority to other coworkers, having to be an authority to students sometimes. I got a couple of stories in particular that I'm going to talk about. But again, I'm not trying to shame anybody, so I'm going to keep it anonymous. One thing to know about me is that I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. Okay. A lot of people just need to learn and grow from their mistakes. But there are some people, when you give them an inch, they take a mile. And working in the esports industry and working with college students, so working with college gamers, sometimes not everyone appreciates what they have or know what they have or know how to control themselves. And some of it is having to tell your peers to where the line is, making sure, again, kind of on the opposite end. If people are overworking you, making sure that you tell people no. I know my value, and there are some times when people want to take advantage of that, and my personal sanity, my personal health comes first. So learning how to tell people no is incredibly important, and I've had to make sure to clarify that. Sometimes people want to joke with you or say things, and if you're not that kind of person, you just have to learn to, I don't know if being an authority is the right term, but learning to stand your ground, learning to say what you feel and telling people where your line is incredibly important. But also, sometimes with students, you can't always be nice, right? As a coach, there are times where you need to tell a kid to shut up and listen. and this is how it's going to be. I had a couple of kids, they're not my students, but they were there, getting really mad and yelling and talking. You know, they were playing their tournament match in a game, and they were just complaining, oh, this is laggy, oh, this person did this, oh man, why don't you go? Like yelling at their teammates, yelling at their opponents, yelling at the lag, yelling at everything, right? Just blaming everything. And I gave them one warning. I said, hey, y'all gotta calm it down. Another coach talked to me and said, hey, you should handle this. You know, these kids are like linebackers. They're some big kids. They're, you know, not my height, but they're pretty big kids. And so, and unfortunately they don't have a coach. Now, if this was my program, there wouldn't be a team. Like, there wouldn't be a varsity team with no coach. But this isn't my program. I'm not running it. I'm just helping out and being a coach. So after their game was done, because I waited for their game to be done. I'm not going to pull them in the middle of a game, at least not this time. And I pulled the captain aside, who was like a student coach. You know, he's a player, coach, student. And pulled him aside and said, hey, I understand that you're frustrated and this and that, but you got to get your team together. All right? And he proceeded to start making excuses. And I was like, look, I understand you're a student, you're a coach, and you're a captain, and you're doing all this stuff. But that's on you. And like, he started saying, oh yeah, I'm not a coach anymore. I'm just a captain and doing this. And it's so hard because I have finals. And I'm like, look, quiet. I said, is somebody forcing you on this team? Is somebody holding you against your will? Is there somebody on this team that's holding against their will? Like, who here is forcing you to be on this team? He's like, nobody. You know, looking kind of confused. I'm like, right. This was voluntary. You signed up for this. You know what you're getting into. You know that this game has issues. You know that your opponent's better than you. I don't care what excuses you have. You're responsible for your team. You have the option of getting your team together and doing these things, or we can handle this another way, right? We can talk to our boss, or you can talk to the head coach. Next time this happens, I'm pulling you all out. I'm talking to the whole entire team and making sure everyone that's involved in this gets it together. If you guys don't listen after that, y'all can go outside. Y'all can leave. And I don't like being that kind of person. And for some people, that's like, oh, that's not a big deal. That's not even that mean. For other people, it's like they couldn't even get themselves to bring that up. And again, I'm a big guy, so I think that I'm not intimidated by any of the students there. I've grown up with people bigger than me. I've grown up with, you know, bullies and stuff like that. I'm not afraid of anybody at this point in my life, right? So that wasn't even on my mind. There are times where, for some people, if you don't know how to be assertive, people can talk you out of your assertiveness. They can talk you out of it with empathy or something like that. They can give you a story, a sob story, and you start missing what your point is because you're too busy trying to be empathetic to them. And there are some people out there that need to hear this and understand that you can be empathetic to someone's situation, but still tell them they need to get their shit together, right? You sometimes have to stand your ground and be like, look, this is a situation you put yourself in, and here are the parameters. You're not going to yell. You're not going to slam desks. You're not going to berate your teammates. And your team, you're not going to allow your teammates to do any of this either, because it wasn't really him, it was one of his players. But I'm trying to make sure I'm personally trying to respect the chain of command. This is a student, and I'm trying to give him a learning opportunity, right? My logic is, here is someone who has taken responsibility. I'm going to make sure that he is a person that fixes this issue. If he doesn't fix this issue the next time I'm there, then I fix the issue. And if I don't fix the issue, then, you know, again, this isn't my program, so I'm not going to make the final call, but I'm going to share what my suggestion is, and whatever that captain does after that, I'm going to be like, okay. But if on my watch I do see these things, they're getting kicked out. That's something I can do, that I've been given the liberty to do. I might not be able to disband them or anything like that. Not saying that I would, but within my power, they don't need to be there distracting the rest of the players, distracting my players, and distracting me. Great kids. I think all the kids that I'm talking about right now, they're good. But you gotta have integrity. You gotta stick to what you believe in. And for the people that listen to this that don't always know how to be assertive, that are shy, again, it has to do with getting out of your comfort zone. But in these kinds of situations, it's important to have a very fine, very visible idea of what the rules are what you're going to tolerate and what you won't tolerate, and making sure that regardless of what people say, that you understand and stay true to that. There might be some wiggle room here and there, and that's per person. But a lot of times you got to learn how to recognize excuses in people and when that is totally irrelevant from what you're saying. It's not fun. It's not fun being that person to be like, you got to do this thing because I said so, because I'm the authority figure. I never like people who are like, do this because I said so. And the thing that I'm concerned about is that this person may not fully ever understand what the heck I meant or what I was saying. And that would be a shame. But, you know, in the future I'll find out, and maybe I'll give an update on that as well. Keep it vague, of course. But yeah, I think it's important to learn how to be an authority, to learn how to be authoritative, to learn how to be assertive, right? It might not be someone that is your superior, or I mean your I can't think of the term. Someone who is a less status than you. You're in charge of them, right? It might not be like that. It might be a peer, it might be a friend, it might be a family member. But you recognize something, or you recognize that someone agreed to do something and they're not actually doing it. It's important to have integrity and hold them to that standard. It's important to hold them accountable for what they're doing, and making sure that you are clear about that. Sometimes you're put in that situation and you got to hold firm. And so hopefully that is helpful for you. That said, the last thing I want to mention, of course, all the social medias. You can follow me on there. I should have links down below. Of course, I talked about this earlier. I gotta actually plug this during the time of talking about audiobooks, but you can go to taviannapier.com/audible and get you a free month of Audible. If you're interested in audiobooks, I highly recommend it. The first option is the Plus version, where you can go and you have access to their Plus catalog. So there's tons of books on there, almost like Netflix, that you can listen to that's already on there. I talked about Viridian Gate Online as one of those books. If you want to get the Bible, that's one of the books as well, if you're interested in listening to the Bible. Or you can get the version that I have. I've had this version, for like 10 years. It's been called different names, but it's called the Premium Plus version now. This one gets you access to the catalog as well, but it also gets you a title of your choice, a free book token, I guess they'd call it. And you also get exclusive discounts on different books as well, up to 30%. So that's really, really awesome. I normally just buy one book a month with the token. And then I checked out some of the free books as well, now that I've realized that that was a thing a couple of months ago with the Viridian Gate Online. But you check that out. If you wind up keeping it, if you wind up actually wanting to pay for the service, that's when I actually get something out of it. Otherwise, it's no harm, no foul. You try it out, you don't like it, you don't keep it. But if you do wind up liking it, and it's something that you want to invest in, then I actually get a little bit of money from it on the side, which really helps me out and keeps this whole thing going. So either way, we both benefit. And yeah, I appreciate you guys for your support. Thank you so much. Again, my name is the Philosopher, Tavian Napier, whatever you want to call me. Reach out to me, let me know what you think. I'd love to know more about what you guys thought about this episode in the comments down below, or feel free to reach out to me on the social media links. Thank you guys so much, and as always, I will see you all in the next one.